Is it difficult to take a step with your legs? Have your legs become weak? Has it become difficult to stand on your legs? Stop taking your daily multivitamin and walking away thinking you're covered. Because if your legs have been shaking when you stand up from a chair, or your knees feel like they might buckle on the stairs, that little pill is not doing what you think it's doing, and nobody in the vitamin aisle is going to tell you that. I'm going to say something that might upset a few people watching this right now. Weak, trembling legs after 60 are not just getting old. That phrase, "you're just getting old," is the laziest sentence in modern medicine, and it has convinced millions of people to quietly accept a decline that is, in most cases, reversible. I've spent years working alongside patients dealing with exactly this. Legs that used to carry them up 3 flights of stairs without a second thought, now shaking after a single flight, or worse, giving out entirely when they try to rise from the couch. And in a startling number of those cases, the answer wasn't more physical therapy, or a cane, or taking it easy. The answer was sitting in their blood work the entire time in the form of a vitamin deficiency nobody had bothered to check. Here's a number that should stop you in your tracks. Research published through the National Institute on Aging has found that muscle strength can decline by as much as 3 to 5% every single year after the age of 60, and that rate of loss speeds up even further after 75. That's not a typo. 3 to 5% every year, compounding, which means over a decade, a person can lose a third or more of the strength they once had in their legs. And yet, in the same population, researchers have repeatedly found that a significant portion, in some studies over 40% of adults over 65, are walking around with a vitamin deficiency that directly worsens this exact process, not a coincidence, a cause. So today, I'm going to walk you through 3 vitamins, not supplements companies want to sell you, not trends, but 3 specific, well-documented nutrients that have been shown to rebuild strength in aging legs, calm the trembling, and in many cases, restore a level of independence people thought they'd lost for good. And I'm going to tell you right now, the one at the very top of this list surprises almost everyone I share it with, because it's not the vitamin people expect. And most doctors don't spend enough time explaining why it matters so much for the legs specifically. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your legs feel the way they do, and more importantly, what to do about it starting today. But before we dive into the list, I want to ask you something, and I mean this genuinely. I read every single comment on these videos, everyone, so tell me 2 things down below. First, how old are you right now? And second, is it your legs specifically that feel weak, or is it more that your balance feels off, like you don't quite trust your legs to hold you? I ask because the answer changes which of these 3 vitamins matters most for you, and I'll be looking through the comments to reply to as many of you as I can. All right, let's get into it. We're counting down from 3 to 1, ranked from important to absolutely essential, so stay with me all the way to the end, because number 1 is the piece almost nobody talks about, and it might be the missing link in your entire recovery. Number 3 on our list is vitamin B12, and I want to open with something dramatic because it deserves it. B12 deficiency has been called the great imitator in geriatric medicine because it mimics so many other conditions that it gets missed constantly, especially in older adults. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Frank, 71 years old, from a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. Frank came in describing his legs as not listening to him anymore. He'd stand up and there would be this half-second delay, like his brain sent the signal, but his legs took too long to respond. And sometimes his legs would just tremble for no reason at all, even sitting still. His doctor had chalked it up to early arthritis and general aging, but when we finally ran a full B12 panel, his levels were shockingly low, low enough to be affecting the nerves that control his leg muscles directly. Here's why this happens, and I want to explain it simply. Vitamin B12 is essential for maintaining the protective coating around your nerves. Called myelin, think of myelin like the rubber insulation wrapped around an electrical wire. When that insulation is intact, the signal from your brain travels down to your leg muscles instantly and cleanly. But when B12 is deficient, that insulation starts to fray, and the signal gets weaker, slower, Sometimes it misfires entirely. That's what creates that trembling sensation and that unsteady, delayed feeling in the legs that so many older adults describe but can't quite explain to their doctor. And here's the aging piece that makes this so much worse after 60. As we get older, our stomachs produce less of an acid called intrinsic factor, which is required to actually absorb B12 from food. Research from Tufts University has found that up to 30% of adults over the age of 50 have reduced ability to absorb B12 from food sources, even when they're eating plenty of meat, eggs, and dairy. So it's not that older adults aren't consuming enough B12, it's that their bodies are physically less able to pull it out of the food and use it. This is a critical distinction because it means the fix isn't necessarily eat more meat. It's about the form of B12 you're taking in. For practical steps, if you suspect low B12, ask your doctor for a simple blood test. This is inexpensive and widely available. If your levels are low or even borderline, a sublingual B12 supplement, meaning one that dissolves under the tongue rather than being swallowed, bypasses that absorption problem in the stomach almost entirely, going directly into the bloodstream. Many practitioners recommend somewhere in the range of 500 to 1,000 micrograms daily for someone with a documented deficiency, but this really should be guided by your doctor and your blood work because dosing needs vary person to person. Frank started sublingual B12 alongside dietary changes, and within about 10 weeks, he described his legs as waking back up, the trembling reduced dramatically, and that delayed response when standing up nearly disappeared. Now here's your synergy tip for B12, and this one matters. B12 works far better when paired with adequate folate, also known as vitamin B9, because these two nutrients work together in the same metabolic pathway to support nerve and blood cell health. Leafy greens, lentils, and fortified cereals are excellent folate sources, and combining these with your B12 routine creates a 1-2 punch for nerve function that neither nutrient can achieve as well on its own. But B12, as important as it is, isn't actually the vitamin most responsible for that classic, my legs feel weak just standing up from a chair sensation. That distinction belongs to something else entirely, something that acts almost like a hormone in your body, and it's number 2 on our list. Now, before we move to number 2, I want to pause for just a moment. If this information is new to you, or if it's explaining something you've been experiencing and couldn't understand until right now, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and tap the like button on this video. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are dealing with the exact same thing, people who might be sitting there right now thinking their weak legs are just an inevitable part of getting older, when the truth might be sitting in a simple blood test. It costs you nothing. It takes 2 seconds, and it tells me you want more of these breakdowns. All right, let's continue. Number 2 is vitamin D, and I want to start with a statistic that genuinely alarms me every time I revisit it. According to research compiled by the National Institutes of Health, an estimated 1 in 4 adults over the age of 60 in the United States has a vitamin D level low enough to be classified as deficient, and when you include those in the insufficient range just below normal, that number climbs to over half of the older adult population. Half. Think about that for a second. More than half of people over 60 may be walking around with a vitamin D level too low to properly support their muscles. Here's the analogy I use with patients because vitamin D's role in muscle function surprises people. Think of vitamin D like the delivery driver bringing calcium to a construction site. Your muscles need calcium to contract properly. That's the raw material. But without vitamin D acting as the delivery mechanism, that calcium never makes it to where it's needed. Muscle fibers, particularly what are called fast twitch fibers, the fibers responsible for quick, powerful movements like catching yourself when you stumble, are especially rich in vitamin D receptors. When vitamin D is low, those fast twitch fibers begin to shrink and weaken disproportionately, and this is exactly why low vitamin D has been linked in multiple studies to increased trembling, reduced grip strength, and a higher rate of falls, specifically in older adults. Let me tell you about a patient. I'll call her Dorothy, 78 years old, living just outside Tucson, Arizona, which surprised her family. because she lived somewhere sunny and assumed sun exposure meant she couldn't possibly be deficient. But Dorothy rarely went outside past 10 in the morning because of the heat, and when she did, she wore long sleeves and sunscreen, both of which blocked the skin's ability to produce vitamin D. Her legs had become so weak that she'd started avoiding the stairs in her own home entirely, sleeping in a spare room downstairs because climbing to her bedroom felt too risky. Her blood work showed a vitamin D level significantly below the healthy range. Here's why this matters so much more after 75 specifically. Research out of Boston University has shown that the skin's ability to produce vitamin D from sunlight drops by as much as 75% by the time someone reaches their 70s compared to their 20s, because the skin simply becomes less efficient at converting sunlight into usable vitamin D as it ages. So even someone getting what looks like plenty of sun exposure may be producing a fraction of the vitamin D they think they are. On top of that, kidney function, which is required to convert vitamin D into its active form, naturally declines with age too, compounding the problem from two directions at once. For practical steps, get your vitamin D level tested. This is a standard blood test called 25-hydroxyvitamin D, and ask your doctor for the actual number rather than just normal or abnormal. Many geriatric specialists consider levels below 30 nanograms per milliliter to be suboptimal for muscle health specifically, even if the lab technically calls it within range. If supplementation is recommended, vitamin D3, not D2, is the form most efficiently used by the body, and it's typically taken with a meal that contains some fat, because vitamin D is fat-soluble, meaning it needs dietary fat to be properly absorbed, similar to how you'd need oil to dissolve certain vitamins rather than water. Dosing varies enormously based on your starting level, so this is one to work through with your physician rather than guessing on your own. But many people with documented deficiency are guided towards supplementation in the 1,000 to 2,000 international unit range daily, sometimes higher short-term under medical supervision, before dropping to a maintenance dose. Dorothy, under her doctor's guidance, began a supplementation plan, and by month 3, she told me she'd started sleeping in her own bedroom again, climbing the stairs twice a day without thinking twice about it. The synergy tip here is critical and often overlooked. Vitamin D works hand in hand with vitamin K2 because K2 helps direct the calcium that vitamin D delivers into the bones and muscles where it belongs, rather than allowing it to accumulate in places like artery walls. Foods like natto, a fermented soybean product, and certain aged cheeses contain K2 naturally, and many practitioners now recommend pairing D3 supplementation with a small amount of K2 for this exact reason, ensuring the calcium goes where you actually want it. And that brings us to number 1. This is the one I mentioned at the very start, the one that surprises almost everyone because it's not typically thought of as a muscle vitamin at all, yet the research connecting it to leg strength in aging adults is honestly some of the most compelling data I've come across in this entire field. Number 1 is vitamin E, but specifically in its role protecting something inside your muscle cells called mitochondria, and once I explain this, the trembling in your legs is going to make a lot more sense. Think of mitochondria like the tiny power plants inside every single muscle cell. They're the structures responsible for actually generating the energy your muscles need to contract, to hold you steady, to push you up out of a chair. Here's the problem. As we age, these power plants take on damage from something called oxidative stress, which is essentially wear and tear caused by unstable molecules called free radicals. Think of free radicals like rust, slowly forming on metal machinery, corroding it bit by bit until it can't function properly anymore. Research published in the journals of gerontology has shown that mitochondrial function in muscle tissue can decline by as much as 40% between the ages of 20 and 70, and this decline accelerates specifically in the legs, because the large muscles in our thighs and calves are some of the most metabolically demanding tissue in the entire body, meaning they need enormous amounts of consistent energy just to keep you upright. Vitamin E is one of the body's primary fat-soluble antioxidants, meaning it works specifically within the fatty membranes surrounding your cells, including the membranes protecting those mitochondrial power plants. Without adequate vitamin E, oxidative damage accumulates faster inside muscle cells. Mitochondria degrade more quickly, and the result is muscles that fatigue faster, produce less force, and in many patients, exhibit that fine trembling, almost like a low battery warning light flashing inside the muscle itself. Let me share a second patient story, because this one really solidified this connection for me. I'll call him Walter, 74, from a small community near Asheville, North Carolina. Walter had been an avid gardener his whole life, but over about 18 months, he described his legs as running out of gas after just a few minutes of standing at his garden beds, along with a persistent, low-level trembling in his thighs by the end of any active day. He'd already been checked for the more commonly discussed issues. Thyroid function was normal. His B12 and vitamin D were actually reasonably adequate, which frustrated him because he assumed those were the only culprits worth checking. It was his vitamin E level, tested through a less commonly ordered panel, that came back notably low, likely related to a long-standing low-fat diet he'd adopted decades earlier for heart health reasons, not realizing it was limiting his intake of fat-soluble vitamins like E. Here's why the aging piece matters so specifically with vitamin E and the legs. A concept called anabolic resistance becomes increasingly relevant after 60. This refers to the way aging muscles become less responsive to the normal signals that trigger muscle repair and growth, even when adequate protein and nutrients are present. Chronic low-grade inflammation, which naturally increases with age in a phenomenon researchers sometimes call inflammaging, worsens this resistance even further, and vitamin E has documented anti-inflammatory properties that help counteract exactly this process. So you have three things converging in aging legs specifically: declining mitochondrial energy production, increasing anabolic resistance to muscle repair signals, and elevated background inflammation. And vitamin E has meaningful, science-backed effects addressing all three simultaneously. For practical steps, natural food sources of vitamin E include almonds, sunflower seeds, and spinach, and these are excellent starting points. If supplementation is being considered, this is one where caution and medical guidance really matter because vitamin E can interact with blood-thinning medications, which many older adults take, so this conversation absolutely needs to happen with your physician before starting anything. Typical supplemental doses discussed in research range widely, but the key point isn't a specific number. It's ensuring you're not deficient while avoiding excessive supplementation, since more is not automatically better with a fat-soluble vitamin that the body stores rather than excretes easily. Walter, working closely with his physician, adjusted his diet to include more natural vitamin E sources and slightly loosened his self-imposed low-fat restrictions to allow better absorption, and within 4 months, described his gardening stamina as the best it's been in years, with the end-of-day trembling almost entirely resolved. The synergy tip for vitamin E is to pair it with vitamin C, because vitamin C helps regenerate used-up vitamin E within the cell, essentially recycling it so it can continue neutralizing those damaging free radicals rather than being used up in a single pass. Think of it like a filter that gets rinsed clean and reused instead of thrown away after one use. Citrus fruits, bell peppers, and strawberries are simple, accessible ways to bring more vitamin C into the same meals where you're getting your vitamin E. So there you have it, 3 vitamins, each addressing a different piece of the puzzle behind weak, trembling legs. B12, protecting the nerve signals that tell your legs how to move. Vitamin D, delivering the calcium your muscle fibers need to contract with power. And vitamin E, the one almost nobody expects, protecting the very power plants inside your muscle cells that generate the energy to hold you steady in the first place. All of the scientific references I've mentioned throughout this video are linked down in the description, so you can look through them yourself, share them with your doctor, and make informed decisions about your own health, because that's exactly what I want for you. I want to close with something a little more personal. Losing strength in your legs isn't just a physical issue, it touches something much deeper. It touches your independence. It's the difference between confidently walking to get your own mail and needing someone to bring it to you. It's the difference between playing on the floor with a grandchild and worrying you won't be able to get back up. It's the difference between trusting your own body and constantly bracing yourself just in case. I've watched patients regain not just strength, but genuine confidence, the willingness to take a walk without fear, to climb their own stairs without hesitation, and that transformation is available to far more people than currently believe it is. It is not too late for you, no matter your age, no matter how long this has been going on. The body remains remarkably capable of rebuilding itself when it finally gets what it's been missing. If this video helped you understand something about your own legs, your own strength, or someone you love, please subscribe to this channel, because there is so much more we can uncover together about what your body actually needs as you age. And I'd love to know down in the comments which of these 3 vitamins surprised you the most. Was it B12, vitamin D, or that unexpected connection with vitamin E? I'll be reading through every single response.